I'm Mayor John Higdon. Welcome to our April 26, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting for the town of Matthews. We are starting a few minutes late tonight because we met in closed session to discuss some town business prior to this meeting. Remind everyone once again that due to the governor's COVID-19 orders, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners is being conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. The town of Matthews is committed to transparency and robust public participation during these challenging times. I'll remind everyone once again as well that the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record, and they will also visually raise their hand or otherwise visually indicate how they're voting. We're going to move on to agenda item number 2, the invocation or moment of reflection. And this tonight will be offered up by Commissioner Bland.
Thank you. Gracious God, maker of all things and source of all wisdom and goodness, we seek your guidance. Make your presence felt to those various persons in our town who have the responsibility of making decisions that affect the lives and futures of our family and our community. We pray that we communicate clearly, truthfully, and calmly with each other and with the public, and that our messages are crafted with the goal of safety and welfare for all. May truth and empathy be the touchstones of everyone tasked with setting policies for our town and our community. Help the mayor, the commissioners, and staff to see the people they serve as valued members of their own family and give them clear vision as well as strength and hope. Let us all be leaders to serve with true compassion and with equal concern for everyone in our community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Bland. That was very nice. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge. We'll wait till Jay shows us the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move on to agenda item number 4, receive information on Matthews Historical Foundation and Roseland Cemetery. And I believe we have Becky Willard and Paula Lester with us tonight.
No, unmute.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you.
I'm going to go first.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Becky. Yes, Becky.
I'm Becky Willard, 25 Wood Lane, Matthews, North Carolina, 104. Paula, be quiet, honey. I'm president of the Historical Foundation, and I wanted to come and give you a little update on what we've been doing. Despite the past year of the unplanned events with the tornado, the COVID, and several monsoons, we, the MHF board, have been really busy. We have taken lemons and we have made lemonade. We're finishing up repairs on the Reed House. We've already completed adding a ramp for disability access, and we've got a really nice patio. We're currently working on repairing the brick wall that fell down, and soon the house will be getting a fresh coat of paint. The Reed House will be in tip-top shape as we are opening again, finally, for rentals. Our museum is once again welcoming guests for tours. Our director, Barbara Taylor, has been busy working on special projects. We are particularly pleased that she has been able to assist the Park and Rec with the Crestdale History Trail. We're really excited about this and so happy to be a part of it. She began work last February with Park and Rec to develop signage, research and identify families, and work on historical content. Turn page. Okay. I am very proud of the MHF board. They are very engaged, and we are committed to preserving the history of Matthews as well as the upkeep of the historical properties. So we invite you to come by and see our improvements. We have really been busy. Thank you for your time. Now we'll turn it over to Paula Lester. She'll tell you all about the Roseland Cemetery project.
Thank you, Becky. Paula?
Every time I get on Zoom, it seems like they've changed something from the last time I was on there, and it's a big learning curve. And then the next time I get on, I'll be in the same shape, I'm sure. So let me give you a little history of Roseland Cemetery. Located on Main Street in Matthews by the railroad tracks was the Roseville AME Zion Methodist Church. Methodist records show a church meeting was held at this church in 1890, although it may have been in existence before this date. Looking for a burial area for members of their congregation, the Renfros allowed Roseville to use a portion of Renfro property on what is now Monroe Road. At some time, the cemetery was open to members of the African American community in Matthews who were not affiliated with a church that had their own graveyard. This cemetery was used for burials until the late 1950s. We estimate 75 to 125 souls rest here. Roseville had an active congregation until 1928. That year, the United House of Prayer was established in Crestdale, and most of the members of Roseville switched to that church. The abandoned Roseville Church eventually succumbed to time and the elements. However, the Roseville members continued to maintain the cemetery property still owned by the Renfros. Later, relatives of people buried there continued the maintenance of the cemetery property until the 1970s or 80s. Somehow, along the way, the name changed from Roseville to Roseland Cemetery. The cemetery became a property that time had forgotten. I first learned of Roseland in 1998. Over the years, there were several discussions about renovating the cemetery. Since it was on private property, renovating made it impossible. In 2012, it was named a local historic landmark by the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Historic Landmarks Commission. It was the subject of a couple earlier rezonings before Taft Development purchased the property. Part of their rezoning requirements was the renovating, care, and continued upkeep of Roseland Cemetery. A couple of years ago, I had a call from Eagle Scout Hope Thompson. In 2015, he had renovated the Sardis Road Presbyterian Church African American Cemetery as his Eagle Scout project. Growing up in the area, he was extremely interested in Roseland. He has put in countless hours of work on the Roseland project. Being involved in all cemetery meetings, he has been very helpful with steps and cemetery restoration, project schedules, and materials lists. I can't say enough about what a great help he has been. Hoke, I think, is on the Zoom meeting and will talk about the actual restoration done by him and many volunteers at the cemetery.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula, for that. I appreciate it a lot. As Paula mentioned, I've been kind of involved in this from the start back in 2016 when Taft first purchased the property, and have sustained my interest since then. And we started the physical restoration of this site the first week of March of this year. And since then, we've done exactly 8 working days out there, and I have gathered volunteers each Saturday from the community to be able to have this project completed and finished. Since then, from the Roseland Cemetery, we have taken out 7 tons of debris. We've had 75 volunteers total come out over the last 8 working days. Elevation Church has donated supplies, and we have removed sticks, dead trees, leaves, and other natural debris from the site. Paula, I would like to thank you too very much for all the help you've and all the work you put in this too. If it wasn't for Paula, I certainly wouldn't be here right now, and Roseland wouldn't be in the state it is now. We're at the finish line with this project. This week, the developer, Taft, will be constructing the fence that will go around the site, and we have cleaned out almost all of the debris from the site. We have identified several new headstones in the process. We have found artifacts in the cemetery. There's a genealogy report we're working on right now that the Historical Society is doing. So this has been a great project. Like I said, we're right here at the finish line. I know many members of the town council have come out and volunteered their time as well. We're very appreciative for that too. So like I said, thank you very much, Paula, Taft Development as well, and the town of Matthews too for making this possible. It's been an honor.
Paula,
Thank you.
Are you finished with your presentation, Paula?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about this project. And Hoke, I couldn't have found anybody any better to work with. Hoke is like one of the family now. So thank you.
Likewise.
Yeah, I been out a couple times to help with the cleanup, and I would say that Hoke really runs the show. You're a great natural leader. I mean, otherwise there'd just be people walking around, and you kind of direct traffic out there and do a great job. We really appreciate it. I shared with Hoke and a few other people a story that I'd like to tell again very quickly. Back in the mid-'90s, I lived in the Sardis Forest neighborhood right in back of the area where the cemetery was. Lived not too far from former Mayor Bailey, but I actually lived in Charlotte, and my dog escaped my fence and ran away, and I think ran into those woods. And I was unaware that there was a cemetery there. And is my recollection, this was a Thursday or a Friday evening, near dark. It was starting to lightning and rain, and I was running through these woods looking for my dog, and I tripped. It's just like out of a horror story. You know, I look up and I see a tombstone out in the middle of the woods, and I think I let out a very non-manly holler when I saw this. Pretty scary episode, but and I believe later I didn't know what the area was, and I believe Paula first had a discussion with her many years ago about the Roseland Cemetery. So I'm so glad to see it come back to be respected in the manner that it should be, because it's an important part of our history. And again, thank you to Becky and Paula and Hoke and everyone on the Matthews Historical Foundation. You guys are doing a great job. I would like to also give a shout out regarding the newsletter that Barbara Taylor put out, because that was really excellent. That's everybody got that, and it's very interesting reading. So that's a great job. Paula?
Could I say one thing? One thing I want to make sure going forward, Hoke and I have talked about this, is that we can do this work, but the important part in the whole work process is the maintenance of that property.
Mm-hmm.
If we cannot hold their feet to the fire that they're supposed to take care of it, it will end up in the same shape it was when we have started to work on it. And so I really hope that it's part of all of our time. I hope that we can make them understand that that's important and that that's part of their obligation.
Right.
I believe they're committed to that. I was on the board, as were several other commissioners tonight when that zoning went through, and I believe that they're committed to maintaining it. But I'm sure Jay will keep their feet to the fire. We're just fleeting elected board members, but Jay, actually, you actually work here, so you can make sure that the zoning notes.
Well, now and in the future, it's like the next 50 years. You know?
Right. Yeah, it would be a shame to have it fall back in disrepair. Commissioner Whitley.
Hey, Paula, Becky, and Hope, thank y'all. Quick question, Paula, Becky, are there going to be a sign at the entrance? Historical type sign going in the entrance?
There will be, and we're going to have a sign unveiling.
Good.
And Taft is, we're going to put up a bronze highway marker type sign that's very attractive that the HLC liked. I showed it to them already. And it will also have the information that it is a local historic landmark. And what we consider when we get down to the time where we're actually going to do the sign, we have some folks coming to take a look, give us a better idea of how many people they actually think are buried there. And Hoke may be able to speak to that more than I can, but we thought at one time 75. We think maybe now closer to 125, maybe.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah, and so we need to try to make our sign accurate. So we're going to try to get this information before we bite off on the sign.
Well, one other question, if you can. What kind of fencing are we putting around there?
It's a battlefield style fence, four boards high.
5. I think it's 5.
I think it's only, isn't that right, Hope? 4 boards?
I think it's 5.
5. Well, Larry's just saying I think it's 5.
Yeah.
Becky, you're muted. You're on mute, Becky. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that was another thing that the museum is also working on, is to try to identify some of those graves that are in Roseland. So, and we have really, Paula has been working on this for, I believe, 20 years. So it's so nice that we will finally get somewhere on it. Thank you for having us.
Have we identified anybody in the community that perhaps can remember anything about it? I know Harvey Boyd.
Harvey, yeah.
Yeah, Harvey.
Yes,
Yeah.
Harvey does. Yeah, he remembers a grandparent being buried up there, I believe, or a great grandparent.
One of the twins, twins, his mother had twins, and we interviewed her. We have that on tape when she was over 100 years old, I believe, or close to 100 years old. And she had a set of twins, and she said one she just could never get warm. And that child is buried there. I do believe that baby. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you have a comment?
Addie Dixon believes that she has a relative buried there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we now have a list. Barbara has been keeping a list. When people call in, we've asked them to call the museum and give the name and the birth and death dates, if they have it, of the person in their family that they believe may be buried there. The last time I talked to her last week, she had 45 names.
I think she's up to 51 now.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Any other questions while we, Commissioner Miller?
Thank you. One small comment. When I worked at Family Dollar across the street for 15 years, a few of my employees told me that their grandparents used to live on the property that sold eventually to Family Dollar and were members of the Crestdale neighborhood. I'm going to try to reach out to them and see if they have any additional information or memorabilia about that property.
That would be good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hope, do you need additional help? You said you're near the finish line. What do you need to finish up?
Well, so we're right at the finish line. We've got a couple of stumps to cut out. The developer's sending a landscaper to level the stumps out where we had cut the dead trees. We've got a couple of piles of leaves that we got to get out, and that's pretty much it. I'm still waiting to see when the fencing materials are coming in, because then as soon as those come in, they're going to start constructing the fence. If they're not here before the weekend, we'll probably have a day this Saturday of just a small crowd, just to finish up the last final things, to get the piles of leaves and things like that. Otherwise, it's just a couple of items that we've got to finish up.
So any of the elected officials or anybody that's watching this meeting tonight that cares to volunteer, what time are you starting on Saturday?
I'll be out there at 8:00 in the morning.
Okay. So if you haven't had a chance to go out, please do and see it. It's a really beautiful site now. Paula, do you have something else?
Just one thing about an idea that actually Larry had, and I think it's a good one. And I mentioned this to Larry Whitley. We're going to put a QR code on a tab on the sign so that you will be able to access. It'll actually be on the pole. You'll be able to access the survey and research report that the Historic Landmarks Commission did as a requirement to become a local historic landmark. So what the sign may say will have enough information for probably 95% of the people. There'll be 5% that are curious and would like to know more. And that will take you to that site. And they'll be able to read it or, whatever. So I think that is a help.
Well, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything that you do. History is so important to the town of Matthews, and we have let a few items fall into disrepair, and I'm glad to see that we're correcting that with the volunteers. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. All right. We will move on to agenda item number 5, receive an update on COVID from Chief Kinnenberg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today is the 409th day we've dealt with COVID. Currently, Mecklenburg County has 108,459 cases, and 939 deaths. Matthews has 99 residents in isolation in 80 different locations. Both the increase in the number of cases and deaths related to COVID have risen about 3.7% over the last 2 weeks, which is steady. We're at a point now where the numbers in the matrix wander above and below the average almost on a daily basis. Under the governor's color coding system, we are still in the significant category. The 7-day average new cases is running about 240. In 7 days, the positivity rate is about 7%, and 170 cases per 100,000 puts us somewhere between moderate to substantial risk when it relates to COVID and spread. Again, the 7-day positivity average is about 6.8%. And again, somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 to 170 cases per 100,000, depending on which day you pick out of the report. The hospitals are reporting about 167 people in the hospital with a COVID diagnosis, and that remains steady. The governor is expected to relax restrictions in early June. We hope to have an announcement on that sometime this week. The biggest problem we face is the number of people seeking vaccinations continues to decline. Availability is outstripping demand. We seem to be in a cycle where some folks are vaccine shopping. They're making multiple appointments and not canceling. And there are quite a number of no-shows. Again, supply exceeds demand. Younger people who were initially hesitant to get vaccinated now appear to be apathetic about getting the vaccination at all. We had plans to do a second town-sponsored clinic, but we have shelved those plans because of the hospital and the pharmacy activity that's going on. Some counties are actually asking the state not to send any more vaccine. About 22% of Mecklenburg County residents over the age of 18 are partially vaccinated, and 35 are fully vaccinated, which is pretty much in line with the state average. The health department is exploring strategies for how to increase the number of the percentage of vaccinated. Education efforts are underway across the county, including targeting what was under-vaccinated population segments. Currently, the African American and the Hispanic populations are fairly close to the the rest of the population in terms of vaccination. A lot of talk about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The emergency use authorization was never formally declined or rescinded, but it was paused. Now it's back on, and it is a provider administration of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is at the provider's discretion. Mecklenburg County Public Health has all three vaccines, and they are offering the Johnson & Johnson as well as other options at most clinics. So that concludes my report. I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Do you have any questions for Chief Kindenberg? Excuse me. Being done, I'd like to share that I heard a report on the news. I don't recall the source, but it stated that a lot of people would prefer to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because it's a one dose, one shot and you're done. But the report, some good news. I think they've had 15 cases now of blood clots out of 7 or 8 million shots given. So that's, you have 1 in 500,000 chance of developing any complications. And they said that there's actually a protocol or a cure if you are to get sick and there's some signs like severe headache, etc., that you get if you have this blood clot issue. They can treat it. So it's even if you were to get that, if you were unlucky and got 1 in 500,000 to get it, there's a treatment for it. So it's not deadly. I would just like to personally, once again, plead with all of our friends and neighbors to please consider getting the vaccine. It's relatively painless. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, please do it for others in the community that may get sick and die if you were to transmit COVID to them. So please continue to get vaccinated. There's plenty of availability, so really no excuse not to do it. Any other questions or comments? Larry, you got anything coming up at your church?
Yeah, church every Sunday at 9:45. All y'all are welcome.
Not exactly what I was looking for, but that's we'll hear the good news at 9:45 at Pastor Whitley's Mount Moriah Church. All right.
I would say, typically this coming Sunday is our law enforcement and public service appreciation service. I wanted to try to pull that off, but my board didn't feel like we could do that this year. So we're going to postpone that to next year for all the police, fire, and public service. And next year, we hope we can be able to pull that off and have y'all some good meal next May.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Chief Kindenberg. Move on to agenda item number 6. Are there any items to be added to the agenda, Lori? Or Hazen? I'm sorry.
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Lori, do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through I-2.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Miller. Roll call vote. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes unanimously. Boy, if I hold my hand too far, it gets into the blur there. All right, so that passes. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, unfinished business. Consider exemption from qualification-based selection process for design work for 335 East Matthews Street. Jay Camp.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is a follow-up to our 6 p.m. discussion 2 weeks ago about the 335 East Matthews project, or rather site. Similar to the Veterans Park or Pocket Park process we have laid out, that Corey's working on, we are asking the board this evening to exempt the town from for design services for projects less than $50,000. Our plan is, as you see under proposed solutions, to bring back estimates to the board. So we're going to reach out to several firms, and the exact process would be to develop 3 different site plan iterations, one of which being preservation of the home on the property. That was the direction we received from the board 2 weeks ago. There is an attached resolution. And that's really all I have for you this evening.
Okay, can we go back to the gallery view? Or?
Sure. Yes.
All right. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that we approve the attached resolution to exempt the procurement of design services for the property at 335 East Matthew Street from North Carolina General Statute 143-64.31.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Urban. Is there any discussion before I call for the vote? Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Do have a question or maybe a comment that often when architects bring proposals or is this is for a developer or for an architect? I don't know.
For a design firm, it's essentially it could be someone with an architecture background, but I think we're more interested in the horizontal design of the site. I mean, there could be some ideas or sketches or renderings that or 3D perspectives that give you sort of a general feel for what a development might look like. But yeah.
I guess my comment or my thought about this is that oftentimes if somebody brings a design to to a customer, then they then offer the credit for that design to be applied later on to the project. So if we're doing this, then I would prefer to see, I would prefer to see several different companies bring something forward so that we can get a better feel for what to expect in the future, if that makes sense.
Mr. Buckley.
This exemption only applies for these design firms. What you're doing is you're saying we don't want to put it out for an RFQ. We want to be exempted from the RFQ. An RFQ, just you put it out there and you pick or select either the architect or the design engineer or whomever that you then do it on quality, and then you negotiate the fee. With this, you're going to exempt from the RFQ and go straight into the request for proposals. And Jay's indicated that they're going to go ahead and submit it for design to several of the design firms. Isn't that what I heard you say, Jay?
That's correct.
So all you're doing is avoiding the RFQ. You're not avoiding the submission to. Now you can do it on a request for proposal, and based on the quality of the proposal and also the cost can be considered.
So what are
we going to see several different products is what I'm asking, I guess.
So you would have several different bids, as you did, I think, just 2 weeks ago when Corey shared some of the firms that bid on the Veterans Pocket Park.
Okay, so we will see those.
Yes.
Well, I think maybe the clarification, like with Corey's, we had 3 firms, we evaluated them, and we only sent to y'all the recommended firm. What I hear Commissioner or Mayor Pro Tem Garner saying, you'd like to see copies of all the proposals?
Yes, for this I would, to get a feel for the different sort of nuances of each design or firm.
So Jay, we can talk about it later, but my suggestion is we go through and evaluate as staff, we'll make a recommendation, we'll just have we'll have the whole packet in the board's agenda packet.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
To further clarify, because this has come up obviously more than once, many times since I've been an elected member. For everyone's edification, maybe Charlie, can you tell us what the difference in the two methods are, Jay? Pros and cons of each, or why is this more suitable for this application than sending everything out for an RFQ?
Well, an RFQ is based only on what are the qualifications of those that you've submitted requests for RFQs. Then once you've got a qualified candidate selected, then at that point you negotiate the price. The statute says that you can gain an automatic exemption if the project is going to be less than $50,000 for design cost. So you exempt yourself from that, but then you put it out for RFP, where you put it out for those same candidates. And on this one, you get the proposal, but you also get what their fees will be. So then the board can make a decision on not only the quality of the workmanship, but also on the cost of that project up front.
Everyone clear on that?
It's a statutory thing. It really isn't designed to create any mystique or anything. It's just a statutory. Commissioner Urban could probably explain that better than I.
Well, Charlie's spot on. I've always felt that request for qualifications actually escalates the fees that an architect or an engineer obtains from the town or community. By releasing this, it gets into more of a competitive bidding situation, and you're going to get a fairer price. But I guess going back to Renee's point, Renee, are you looking for 3 different design firms to give 3 different design choices, or you just want to see the 3 different bids and the qualifications of these firms going after this design proposal?
I would just like to see, I guess, the 3 different design firms and get a feel for who they are and what they do versus sort of really just getting one kind of that the town feels comfortable with.
Right. Okay. It almost sounded like you were asking if we offer this up to a design competition where you just basically invite several firms to go ahead and you each give them $10,000 a piece and say, give us 3 or 4 different options, and you put them into your portfolio and you hold on to them for a rainy day. Because ultimately, Jay, if I'm not mistaken, the objective here is to give us some guidance that if we want to put an RFP out for the property, we have some guidelines in which to work with the developer on.
Yes, that's correct. And that doesn't mean that developer would use the same firm.
Correct.
They would likely retain their own firm, and it would give us a starting point, but it may not. It may be the developer doesn't propose that exact layout, but it may set out what some of the objectives are of the town. Maybe there's a green space component or some other aspect of the RFP.
So usually this type of RFP then lends itself to a civil engineering firm that has a strong LA or landscape architectural background. And it's all, like Jay was correct, it's all sort of horizontal endeavor from that aspect of it. Okay, thank you.
Hey, can I ask Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Urban to restate your motion to include that the board will see all the proposals?
Sure. Let me go back to my original one. I'll make a motion to approve the attached resolution to exempt the procurement of design services for the property at 335 East Matthews Street from North NC General Statute 143-64, and that when the proposals come forward from the design firms, that we are allowed to see all of them.
Very good.
Is that good?
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Urban. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 10, new business. 10A, receive the monthly budget report from Ms. Hawk.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. So we have in front of you tonight the budget as it is reported through the end of March of this year. So starting to wind down towards the end of the fiscal year. And so just a few brief comments. Our ad valorem tax collection continues to be just slightly down compared to budget. So we do expect that we will end the year slightly below expectations. The county in their expectations as well are also showing that those numbers will also be slightly down. But we do feel like those deficits will be able to be covered by other revenues, as well as savings that we expect from some of our departments. The local option sales tax is quite strong. We are currently at 67% of budget, and that compares to about 60% of budget at this time last year. And so that is one of the main lines that will help offset any of the reductions in our ad valorem taxes. So we are doing quite well. We did budget that to be lower than it has been previously due to the pandemic, but that line is continuing to perform better than expected, which is great news. Our unrestricted intergovernmental revenues, they're down just slightly. This is a trend that we have seen the last 3 years. So it only equates to about $50,000 less revenue than what we had last year, but it does continue a slight downward trend in those lines that we will have to continue to account for in other revenue areas as we move forward. Recreation, this is the trend that we've seen all year. We have only collected about 22% of the amount that we had budgeted for this year. So that is a significant decrease in revenue. But of course, we continue to have very significant corresponding reductions in our expenditures that more than make up for any reductions to those revenue lines. Investment earnings, we've gone over that in prior months. Interest rates are not what they used to be. So that line is basically non-existent, but no major concerns there. It was not a big mover for us compared to budget. Our departments continue to do a good job. We are up just slightly compared to last year's totals, but we don't have any concerns as we move in towards the end of the fiscal year. Tourism collection rates. This is also an area that we had reduced projections for this year due to the pandemic. So we are doing better than we expected, but it is still an overall net reduction when you look at the actual dollars collected compared to last year. But like our recreation revenues, reduction in expenditures is significant. So overall, we are doing quite well in our tourism fund. On the whole, we have net revenues exceeding expenditures by about $2.5 million. And for comparison, we were at about $2.79 million this time last year. So quite comparable overall. So on the whole, no real concerns. It has been a pleasure serving as the interim finance director for the last few months. Pleased to be expecting to introduce our new finance director to you at your next meeting, and then they will get to take over these reports this time next month. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is the report.
Becky, I believe I've asked this question probably 5 or 6 times since I've been an elected official, but it's a little troubling, and I want to review again on the interest rates that we receive. Are we held to statute only buying, AAA bonds that pay 0.00001% or whatever it is? You can put the money in a coffee can and behind town hall and earn more interest. Or could we do something at least slightly more aggressive? I mean, the stock market went up 35% last year, and we're earning, 0.01% of interest. Is just frustrating.
Sure. So definitely understand. So when the stock market does really good, we grumble. The flip of that is if the stock market is not doing well, and our interests are protected because we are statutorily required to hold our funds with the local, with the LGC, the Local Governments Commission, and they manage everything in a trust. And so that is what we are obligated to do as far as managing our funds. So we are held to essentially the interest rates that you are going to get for savings accounts, bonds, the tiny interest rates that we're all seeing in our personal savings accounts. They're comparable to that as opposed to the open market. So, the positive is the state as a whole fared much better during the major downturns in the economy over a decade ago compared to some other states that are not managed as tightly. So we are one of the most tightly managed states in the country, is my understanding of it. But on the whole, it does make us, solid when things aren't going as well.
Yeah, I understand that. I would certainly not advocate, going to Vegas with our money or doing something very aggressive. But there are some extremely conservative funds that are really, really conservative that are paying 2 or 3% interest. And it'd be nice if we could at least do that. It's just frustrating to see us making pittance. But Mr. Miller, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ms. Hawk for doing such a fine job on managing the money and educating us on the budget and where we stand both this year and next year. And make sure, Becky, that you add that as an asterisk or a bullet point on your resume. Interim.
Well, I'm not shopping the resume anywhere, so
good.
But I appreciate that.
Good, thank you.
Good comment, Commissioner Miller. I think that reflects the sentiments of the entire board. So great job, Becky. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments for Becky before we move on? All right, we'll go to 10B. Consider the FHWA request for experiment for advisory shoulder on Matthews Chapel Roads. Susan Abena-Woolard.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. It's always a pleasure to be presenting to you on a transportation topic. We know that being a walkable and bikeable community is important to the town, seeing as at least half of the town's vision statements talk about being walkable and bikeable. Let me fix my screen here. And my question for you tonight, one of many, is are you ready to be the first? Yes, no, well, I sure am. Okay, maybe not the first, but how about being a leader in alternative devices to encourage walking and bicycling in the town of Matthews? But let's first talk about a key project that is almost done, and that is the Crestel Heritage Trail. And the Heritage Trail is complete. Jay, can I get my slides up? The Heritage Trail... Thanks. The Heritage Trail is complete and open from Town Hall to Tanktown Road. As recent as last week, informational signs were posted along the trail. Next slide. Thank you. The project celebrates the history of the Crestel area of Matthews, an historically African-American community, approximately 1 mile southeast of downtown. In this image on the screen, you see plans for the constructed trail starting on the left side of the picture in green and orange at McLeod Street. And that paved trail connects directly to the roadway pavement on Matthews Chapel Road. Trail users are expected to utilize the roadway of Matthews Chapel Road to get to the newly widened sidewalk on Crestel Road, which is shown in red on the image. If you haven't been on the open sections of the trail, I highly encourage it. The Parks Department worked hard to provide this amenity to the town. But then, of course, I had to stick my nose in and see what's going on. Here are some recent photos of Matthews Chapel Road. In short, it's a dead-end street coming off Crestel Road at the CSX railroad tracks. It serves as access to 8 parcels, 4 houses, the old Crestel Community Center, and an exit driveway to a church. You see at the top where the paved trail ends at the roadway pavement. There are no bicycle and pedestrian designated spaces on Matthews Chapel Road. No sidewalks, no bike lanes. And that might be just fine. It's a low speed, low volume street. As our transportation planner, Dana Stujinski, says, you can do cartwheels down the middle of the street and still feel safe. But wouldn't it be nice to improve the walking and bicycling experience for trail users and to create a visual continuity of the Crestel Heritage Trail from the western portion of Matthews Chapel Road to the continuation of the trail along Crestel Road? Staff thinks so and considered various options to meet these 2 key goals. As in every engineering study, there's always a do nothing option, and it's usually the least expensive option. As I mentioned, staff believes the trail as currently configured without any treatments to Matthews Chapel Road doesn't pose a significant safety risk to trail users. So the do nothing option is fine from a safety standpoint, but it doesn't meet the goals of pampering the trail users and creating that visual continuity of the trail. Bike lanes and sidewalks accommodate one type of trail user. I mean, it's not particularly intuitive to walk in a bike lane or bike on a sidewalk. However, widening the pavement or adding a sidewalk will be costly and is geographically constrained in this area. That's when staff thought of advisory shoulders as a potential solution. The device is also referred to as a yield roadway, designed to serve pedestrians, cyclists, and motor vehicle traffic in the same slow-speed travel area. Yield roadways serve bi-directional motor vehicle traffic without lane markings in the roadway travel area. This is done through the use of advisory shoulders, which create usable shoulders for bicyclists and pedestrians on a roadway that is otherwise too narrow to accommodate these users. The shoulder is delineated by pavement markings and optional pavement color. Motorists may enter the shoulder only when no bicyclists are present or pedestrians and must overtake these users with caution due to potential oncoming traffic. We know from the Federal Highway Administration Rural Design Guide that streets with volumes below 6,000 ADT and speeds less than 35 miles per hour are good candidates for advisory shoulders. Here, you can see Matthews Chapel Road is at 95 ADT and a median speed of 21.5 miles per hour and an 85th percentile speed of 26.7 miles per hour, making it an excellent candidate for this affordable option. Advisory shoulders meet the goals of providing a dedicated space for trail users while providing that visual continuity for the trail. From the Federal Highway Administration Rural Street Guide, benefits include less costly to build or maintain than a fully paved out cross-section, connects local residential areas to destinations on the pedestrian network, limits impermeable surface area and minimizes stormwater runoff, maintains aesthetic of narrow roads and uncurbed road edges, encourages slow travel speed when narrower than 20 feet. Matthews Chapel Road is 17 feet. And it can support a larger tree canopy when located within wide unpaved roadside areas. This next exhibit shows on an aerial what the pavement markings that create the advisory shoulder would look like. It's simply a dashed white line, and it'll be located 6 feet from the edge of pavement. Sorry, the dimensions are a little small in this exhibit, but the shoulder would be 6 feet, resulting in an 11-foot lane for vehicle traffic. Should two vehicles enter the vehicle lane from opposite directions, which is a very low probability on a 95 ADT roadway, the westbound vehicle may enter the shoulder area once bicyclists and pedestrians have cleared. If there are users in the shoulder area, so the vehicles must wait for them to pass, and then the westbound driver can move into the shoulder area for the opposing vehicle to pass it. I suspect that our preliminary observations will indicate drivers are already utilizing the middle of the pavement anyway to traverse Matthews Chapel Road rather than sticking to the right side. On this exhibit, you'll also notice a proposed crosswalk at the end of the constructed asphalt path there on the left side of the exhibit to direct the trail users into the advisory shoulder, and also has the accompanying trail user warning signage. There might be additional signage requested by the Federal Highway Administration. Now, you may have heard me say, and optional pavement color on the previous slide, and you may also know that there's a current call for artists for street mural, and you may have deduced that this street is that street mural location. Yes, that is something that's on the staff's radar, but we are not yet ready to bring that forward tonight. That is definitely a more involved discussion and is not part of this current request for experiment with the Federal Highway Administration. Here's some images I've pulled for you from the Federal Highway Administration and our friends at Alta Planning and Design. The renderings on the left depict the intended use with that, you see that white skip line. Matthews Chapel Road just meets that minimum suggested criteria of a 6-foot shoulder and that 8 to 10 foot center vehicle travel lane. So we would have a 6-foot shoulder and an 11-foot vehicle travel lane. The pictures on the right show how it looks, in the field on the pavement. These are actual pictures from Hanover, New Hampshire. You see the two individuals walking in a marked shoulder, and then you can see in the lower right-hand corner a vehicle driving on that yield roadway down the middle of the road. Like these roadways, Matthews Chapel Road benefits from excellent sight distance until the curve at the end, but even then, sight distance is not really constrained along Matthews Chapel Road. Now, I hope you're all thinking that, yes, this is a great idea. And yes, advisory shoulders should accomplish the goals of improving walking and bicycling experience along the trail and creating visual continuity of the trail. You may also be thinking, why do we even need to bring in FHWA? Well, the short answer is I'm a total geek and I want to do studies and I want to send that data to the Federal Highway Administration because that's just who I am. But the better answer is that, yield roadways and advisory shoulders are not yet included in the manual on uniform traffic control devices. So we wouldn't be covered under the blanket protection that the METCD provides. However, good news, the Federal Highway Administration is allowing experimental use of the advisory shoulders, which does provide some protection if we follow the FHWA rules. We submit the data and the reports to Federal Highway, and if we agree to remove the advisory shoulder if we or FHWA deems it unsafe. This request, like I said, would be the first. This would be the first for advisory shoulders. There are several requests for experimental advisory bike lanes, but none yet for an advisory shoulder. So for you, the benefit of going through the FHWA request for experiment process is a liability protection for following FHWA rules and guidelines. And for me, it's a chance to do some research and submit data. I have already spoken to the Federal Highway representative about this project, and he was generally in support of the advisory shoulder on Matthews Chapel Road. But there was no way I was going to bring this to you if I hadn't first called them and asked them what they thought about it, right? The Matthews TAC heard this item at their meeting last Thursday, provided some great feedback to staff. One of those items is about public involvement, which I thought you would also be interested in. Fortunately, Matthews Chapel Road is a very short street. Like I said, only 4 houses. And since the development of the Crest Hill Heritage Trail, we've been speaking with Mount Moriah Church about the use of advisory shoulders to talk about it and to kind of help develop that concept. The church owns all of the properties along this frontage of roadway. Additionally, staff has been in contact with other property owners on Matthews Chapel Road to introduce the advisory shoulders concept and to answer any questions. To date, only initial contact has been made, but we are looking forward to meeting with each property owner. If the board feels it's necessary, we can work with the town's communications coordinator to push out information to the broader community. This next slide shows a quick timeline of next steps. If approved tonight, we'll clean up the draft letter to FHWA and submit it in May. Since I've already made that preliminary phone call to David Kirchner at FHWA and he's in support of the use of advisory shoulders on Matthews Chapel Road, I'm hoping for a quick turnaround. So in June, we could potentially be installing pavement markings and do our first round of observations. If the Federal Highway Administration allows us to do our observations and reports annually, then we'll do that each July. If they ask us to do it twice a year, we'll probably do it in April and October. The reports to FHWA are not complicated. I've done this process before, and basically you set up a template and just use that for every report cycle. Thank you all for your attentiveness in this dive into advisory shoulders and Federal Highway Administration request for experiment. Before you on this slide is the requested action tonight, and I welcome any questions that you have.
Susan, I've got a couple questions and a comment. The first question is, I was driving on 45 today and got off at the exit on John Street and noticed that there's some sort of marked shoulder on the exit. What is that? Are you familiar with that?
I have not gotten off that exit recently. Is it just a solid white line?
A solid white line about, 4 or 5 feet that runs almost the entire length of the exit ramp. Is that for if you break down or something to walk off? Or?
Yeah, you'll find that on most exit ramps, modern I should say modern exit ramps, and it's for breakdown. It's, for any sort of bypass needed. You eventually lose the edge of your asphalt too, so those wide shoulders help facilitate just regular maintenance.
Okay.
As well.
The other question I have is, how do you inform people how they're supposed to drive when one of these are installed? I mean, how do they know that they're supposed to yield to pedestrians, et cetera? Is that just intuitive, or?
So the studies show that it's fairly intuitive. Most people recognize a white skip line as a line that can be crossed if there's no conflicting movements. And that street currently doesn't have any pavement markings, so there's no center line on it already. And people tend to just drive down the middle of the street anyway. So that white skip line, if you go back and, to your driver's ed class, it says you can cross the skip line if there's no traffic. And
the comment I would like to make is, first of all, I think it's a great idea. I think it'd be fantastic. It looks like a relatively inexpensive way to improve the walkability of the area and the continuation from the trail. But the other comment I have is I'm a little concerned. I like the white skip and maybe painting it a solid color, but I'm concerned if you put a mural on there, I think that might get too busy, or I don't know. I'm imagining like the dogwood at the community center path. If you put something like that there, I think it would look really odd.
It would be different.
My personal opinion.
Yeah. So we have some really strict guidelines for the artists. I'm working with Melissa Johnson on that. So we'll have strict guidelines for the artists. And like I said, we're not ready to bring that forward, but I just wanted to call it to mind because some of you might have made that connection between the two. And so, things like we would use more muted tones than on that crosswalk. Okay. We would use a repeating pattern so that it's not something new every 10 feet. Yeah. There's some guidelines out there for a length of street mural.
I think a while back I shared with this board, I was in Puerto Rico and they have items like this that they paint green. So, if it's green, that's for pedestrians and bicycles. Commissioner Miller, do you have a comment? Question?
Yeah. I support this project, and where I grew up, there was a greenway that was about 32 miles long, and from time to time it would intervene or overlap with small roads, and they would stripe them and you would share, and I think this is a creative use, so I totally support this with some of the suggestions we've seen tonight. I've walked this. It's beautiful. There are only 4 single family homes down that road with an older community center that is no longer utilized. And I'm ready for a motion anytime.
I believe Commissioner Whitley had a comment first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Susan and I have talked extensively, and I can tell you, as she said, the whole length of that is joining to our property. I've spoke to our church members and our board, and we're all in favor of making this happen. Mayor, in answering your question about how the cars will, I'm telling you, the bikers and walkers are there now and the cars maneuver, but I think it'd be really nice to indicate which side to walk in. I'm very happy and excited about it. You hear me talk about the sidewalk and how much connectivity and how many people are just using it. And you would not believe that bikers and walkers and dog walkers or joggers, but we're excited because we're seeing a whole lot of new people from town, and they're making a good walk from downtown, making the circle, come around Crestdale. A lot of them go up to Matthew Hill Road and come back around, but it's a good walking trail. I know this is not on the agenda tonight with even if we approve this, but I've even asked Susan to consider, we have a vast number of different culture in Matthew. I want to think it's 20, maybe 30 different cultures or heard people of different background. And I even mentioned to Susan, if we're going to do a mural, maybe pick a culture along that way to represent the whole town. I'm just throwing it out as one of my suggestions. I think it'd be good because a lot of different people are walking through there, and if they can see that culture, heritage coming through there, I think it's a nice place to just make that all come there. But we are, and the church is fully behind. And thank you, Susan, on the Crestdale Heritage, and for Corey. If you had not had opportunity, starting to put the signs up, and a lot of people are walking, stopping, reading the sign, and I'm just excited for the connectivity from town to the Crestdale community. And kudos, Hazen, I appreciate you, buddy. A long time, little bit by little bit, but it's all coming reality and to the board. Thank y'all so much.
Is there any other comments or questions before Commissioner Miller makes his motion?
Reverend, you want to make the motion?
You can. I'll second you.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve that staff submittal for a request for experiment to the Federal Highway Administration for advisory shoulder on Matthews Chapel Road, and upon approval by them, install associated pavement markings and signage.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Whitley. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes unanimously.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Move on to item 10C, consider town takeover and maintenance. I understand now this is just for East McDowell Street and not Overcash. Susan, you're up again.
Yes, hi everyone. Again, not as exciting a topic really this time, but that's okay. That's okay. It's still transportation related. So I was hoping to have two resolutions ready for you tonight, but in fact, the Overcash one is not ready. But I thought it would be good to even just talk about it tonight, just as a heads up. The NCDOT maintains some streets and we maintain others, and we have a map called the Powell Bill map, and that's how we get funds from the state for maintenance of our streets. And there is one street on the Powell Bill map, East McDowell Street, that incidentally also shows up on the state route map still. And so I went to the NCDOT district office, and they have no record of us requesting to take over McDowell Street. And we also don't have a record of a resolution to take over East McDowell Street. This happened, it was maybe 15 years ago. And so that first item for McDowell Street is really just a map cleanup. We need a resolution so that the state will take it off their SR map. They haven't done any maintenance on it since we added it to our Powell Bill map, so that I don't anticipate there being any issues with it. And I've talked to the district engineer several times, and she's all for, yes, please take McDowell Street. So it's really no change for us because it's been on our Powell Bill map, and we've been jointly with CMS performing maintenance. Overcash Drive, I do want to bring it up tonight, although the resolution is not ready, is if you recall, there was a recent approved rezoning there at the dead end of Northeast Parkway. And yeah, the map's in there. If you could scroll down just a little bit further, off of 51. So the dot over on the right-hand side, there's this little tiny dead-end street. It serves one house that you can see from that on-ramp onto 51, going from 74 to 51. And, we are envisioning this area, we the staff, and this aerial is a good way to show all the apartments and multifamily that are going in that area. We just perceive this as walkable, bikeable, and with that development going in with some retail in the front, we'd love to see on-street parking on Overcash. We'd love to see street trees on Overcash. And all those nice corridor amenities are so much easier when it's a town-maintained street. Northeast Parkway, if you've taken a peek down there by Matthews Min Hill Road, there are no trees in the median and there's no trees in the planting strip. DOT would not approve them. They approved them in the rezoning process. They said, oh, sure, that sounds fine. But then we went to CD plans. They're not there. So we really like to, it's just 0.18 or 11 miles there for overcash. So it's just a short amount and it shouldn't really impact. However, it's not likely it can get on this year's resurfacing program for the state. And if you know anything about taking over from the state, we all like to have it looking good. We don't want to take over crumbling pavement. It's their job to maintain it. So we need to meet with them, figure out what repairs we would like. Is there ditch cleanup that needs to happen? Is there an overlay that needs to happen? So that one is not ready. We haven't been able to have that meeting with NCDOT, and they've already let their resurfacing contract and not sure if they can get it in for this year. So tonight, if the requested action is to approve the resolution for East McDowell Street to take over from maintenance, there's a sample letter to the district engineer's office. We'll edit that to take out overcash, and it's the last resolution there. If you could scroll down just a little bit further. This resolution here to request transfer of maintenance to the town for East McDowell Street from South Trade Street, 0.18 miles till its terminus. Be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Susan. You did a fantastic job of explaining that. Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, thank you. I stepped away for a second. I may have missed something, but overcash will be privately developed by the new RVS that we approved recently, correct?
I might need Jay's help on this. I am not recalling it being privately maintained. We asked them, I think they showed on-street parking and they would have to add curb and gutter, street trees, sidewalk, but the actual pavement itself, I'm not sure that they had any obligation to. Jay, do you remember?
Yeah, I recall that they committed to, I think, potentially installation of on-street parking pending approval of NCDOT or something along those lines.
Okay, yeah, that's as I recall it. So that's all good news. And are there any plans then on East McDowell towards the community center and around the curve to add curb and gutter or street trees, or just take it over in town then?
Yeah, just to take over the pavement maintenance. Really, we share that responsibility with the school right now. That there's been some patching recently done out there.
And the new crosswalk, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Susan or motions? Commissioner Miller.
I'll make a motion. We adopt the resolution requesting town maintenance for East McDowell Street, SR 3452.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Urban. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Move on to item 10D, consider board response to proposed legislation HB 496. Darren Holman.
Mayor, I'm going to take this. Darren, feel free to be technical expert on this if you'd like. But one of the things about this, and if Jay, can you pull up the proposed legislation? So we are one of the few towns and cities in North Carolina that has authority delegated by the General Assembly to have our own tree ordinance and regulate trees on private property. And so if anybody's read this, this is generally scary legislation for the whole state or municipalities and counties in the state of North Carolina. And I do think the board should oppose this on principle because, in my view, it's a general overreach by the General Assembly into kind of local control is really the best way to govern things. However, we did want you all to know that the town of Matthews has the authority to regulate trees on private property because of action express authorization by the General Assembly, which occurred in 2006 with the help of Speaker Jim Black, by the way. I remember very distinctly, and it was in what they call the Technical Corrections Bill. So the good news there is for us, this legislation is not a threat that it is to many other communities in North Carolina. So Charlie and I had a discussion about this earlier today. He, got us thinking properly on this. I do want to thank Darren for all his work because he pointed out some possible concerns if we didn't have this kind of authority. Charlie, is there anything you would add to my statements?
I think that you correctly illuminated this, but it really will not have an impact on the town of Matthews, even if it passes. But I agree with you that the board may want to take action opposing this just because of the state taking away local control once more, or an attempt to take away local control once more.
Yeah, so my recommendation, and I would like to get the board's thoughts on this, would be that we submit a letter via our legislators telling them that we oppose this because although it doesn't affect Matthews directly, I don't think it's in our best interest to have no tree ordinances in Charlotte or Stallings or Mint Hill. We don't want all the trees cut down all around us because that would impact the quality of life of people that live in Matthews as well. So my recommendation, and we've done this on recent other proposed legislation like the bill that would have eliminated single-family residential zoning, would be that we write a letter to our legislators and ask them to oppose this legislation. It's, pardon my French, but I think it's really asinine legislation. It's crazy to suggest that we eliminate all tree ordinances across the state. It's an idiotic idea and would it have grave consequences, I believe, if it passed. So it'd be my recommendation that we write a letter to our legislators to oppose it, ask them to oppose it. Commissioner Miller? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Thank you. I would support your suggestion to write such letter to our legislators. Do I remember hearing in my reading about this that it would clear cutting would be allowed and all sorts of forestry provisions where we have tree farms would be adversely affected? Is that correct?
It is a little bit hard to tell because it's one paragraph and they don't spell it out at all. And I do think where Darren did a good job is kind of what's this worst case scenario possibilities, not for Matthews per se, but this is the kind of impacts other communities could have. And we don't know the intent behind the bill or how the administrators would enforce this thing.
Thank you.
Darren, for the throngs of fans that are watching us this evening, there may be one or two people on, but just to get it public in the record, would you like to go over a couple of those maybe unintended consequences?
Yeah, sure. 1 second. I can just put the memo back up. Yeah, so specifically, if we didn't have that local ordinance in place, things that this could impact would be our tree ordinance, which is separate from our landscaping ordinance. That's what really the ability to like the champion trees, and then also any locally designated trees of importance. Commissioner Miller had kind of talked about with our forestry and the tree harvesting. So right now, we can kind of regulate that a little bit by designating which trees can be cut and harvested. If we didn't have that local act and this were passed, then we would lose that ability. And then, like, I guess directly what you would see is probably the biggest impact would be any developments that are along like a major highway or a major thoroughfare. In those instances, it would probably be more likely that the property owners would go in to clear cut or to remove along the highway just so the businesses could have a little bit more visibility.
Great. That's some excellent information. We appreciate all the research you did on that. I think it goes to the other crux of the matter, as Hazen mentioned, is yet another attempt to usurp our local authority, and we've got to, I think, be very vocal every time that happens, even if it doesn't directly affect Matthews. But this is another overreach, I believe, by some in the legislature to take away local control. So I think we need to fight back. So I don't know that we need to take a vote, but is anybody opposed to a letter going forth to our legislatures to say that we oppose this? All right. So we will do that. I'd like to go on to item 10E, consider return to in-person board meetings. Several of you have talked about it, a desire to meet in person again. As I've said all along, we've been meeting like this for a long time. I think our meetings are a little bit less effective when we're not all together. I think we have better exchanges of ideas. Even seeing each other before and after the meetings and talking about issues is helpful. My recommendation now, I talked with Lori and we said, okay, let's go back to in-person meetings in May. Lori suggested that we not do it for the first meeting in May because that's our zoning meeting and there'd be all the zoning stuff going on. A lot of people coming into the to town hall. We also heard from Chief Kinnenberg that we expect that the governor is going to relax the standards a little bit in June. And right now, if we were to go to in-person meetings at town hall, under the governor's current order, we would be required to wear masks, which I shared with Lori. I said, it's very uncomfortable to wear a mask for 4 or 5 hours, but then I think about doctors and nurses that wear them for 12-hour shifts, so I probably should complain, but it is uncomfortable to have a public meeting where we're all speaking quite a bit and to wear a mask. So my suggestion would be that we consider having in-person meetings again for our first meeting in June, and hopefully we'll see what the governor's order does to relax the standards, and hopefully we can meet, or maybe we can meet without that, we get socially distanced but not have to wear masks. But I'd like to get any other thoughts or opinions on the matter. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I would not be comfortable without masks. Just, watching what's going on in India and seeing the mutations of the virus, plus having children at home. And while I'm more comfortable because I'm vaccinated, there's still enough uncertainty that mask wearing feels like the most responsible choice. I'm not uncomfortable being in person, but I would like to see masks worn.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts or opinions? Commissioner Miller?
I'll wait on the governor's orders. I've heard rumor or info that he will lessen the restrictions in June, and I understand your point. We have discussed May. The second meeting in May would be fine, but I would support June in person with or without masks or social distancing. It is less effective. Having been on the board for a long time, we are missing out on a lot of information. I've been vaccinated twice and feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think there's a general level of safety we could expect among each other. Like in Huntersville, they've had in-person meetings for quite some time, and they meet in a gymnasium and they sit about 15 feet apart. They don't wear masks. They haven't for a while. But the concern that Lori brought forward is, yeah, we can all say that we're vaccinated and safe, but that doesn't mean that everyone attending the meeting may not be vaccinated. So if we have a lot of, the public coming in, what would the rules be for the public? I think, I do think that we need to, at minimum, do whatever the governor's order says. I wouldn't want to hold meetings in violation of the governor's order. But
Right.
Why don't we just play it by ear and see what the governor's order says, and we'll consider still having Zoom meetings or virtual meetings and through May, and in June see what the governor's order says and go from there. And if you have any other thoughts or opinions on it, of wearing masks or not wearing masks, let us know. Let staff know. Mr. Whitley.
Yeah, Mayor. There is a report that if two people or two persons have been fully vaccinated, they can communicate without masks. However, this past weekend when we met, I felt really good, and everybody's social distance and wearing the mask and take it off when you talk and eat. I felt really safe, and of course, I'm fully vaccinated, and I would like and hope that majority of the staff in town has been vaccinated. That's going to be at the meeting, and I'm June or July, whichever one that we can get closer to herd immunity. And I think Matthews has done a wonderful job in getting a lot of our citizens vaccinated and really taking care of each other. It was a little rough middle part of last year, but it's gotten better. And so I feel better coming back. And when you talk about bringing the public, certainly you don't leave them social distant, and we can require them to come and wear masks and take it off when they make a statement or something. But June or July, I'm on board, whichever one the board decide to do.
And if any town staff that's on the call tonight would like to comment, you're certainly welcome to. You're part of our team, and so we don't want to force our will on you. I don't know if staff is comfortable or uncomfortable meeting in person, if you care to comment.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, I think we will, sounds like it's a consensus of the group that we'll continue to meet via Zoom through May. I was considering maybe the second meeting in May. Why don't we wait until the governor's order comes out in June, and then we'll have this discussion again, I suppose. We're going to item 10F, consider a resolution regarding the 2021 municipal elections. Some of our sister towns in Mecklenburg County have issued, their boards have issued resolutions saying that they intend to have elections in November on the regular schedule. Mm-hmm. And it's still has not been clearly defined, to my knowledge, by the state board of elections what they're going to do. But it sounds like most people that are in the know say that the elections only really need to be delayed for those towns that vote via district. So that does not affect us. It would be my wish that we go ahead and have elections. We were elected for a 2-year term. I'd like to go ahead and have the elections in November. And remember, if we don't, and if they were delayed, say, until May, and those of you that chose to run or got reelected, then your term would only be from May until, it would be a shortened term because we'd have to get back on schedule again. So I don't know if anybody would care to make a motion that we hold our elections, and I don't know what the exact date is. Does anybody have that up?
Yeah.
First Tuesday in November is what? Commissioner Miller?
Second.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we support the resolution for municipal elections be held on the first Tuesday in November, which is November 2nd, 2021, as planned.
Second. You have a second. Second from Commissioner Miller. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
I vote yes. That passes unanimously. So we will, for all intents and purposes, consider that we're having unless we're told otherwise by the state, that we will have our elections in November as scheduled.
Yeah.
Move on to item number 11, the mayor's report. I have a few items. Some of you have may be aware of what happened to the Independence Boulevard transportation project U-2509, which was the huge, $1 billion project that would widen Independence Boulevard, make it an expressway, have the flyovers at Sam Newell, et cetera. And you recall Brett Knipe coming to our board meeting a while ago and showing us the segments of how they were prioritized. Really out of the blue, last Monday, NCDOT had a meeting with some of our staff, and they said, hey, we're going to have this entire project value engineered. We're going to hire a new consultant. We're going to reprioritize it, and et cetera. And this was, kind of blew everybody's socks off. Nobody was aware anything like this was happening. As recently as a month ago, Brett Knipe presented the segmentation plan to to CARTPA, the Charlotte Regional Transportation and Planning Organization. So this was really shocking news. I have attempted to find out who caused this to happen. I've asked NCDOT, I've asked people on the MPO, and I have not received an answer yet. I don't know who made the decision to tap the brakes and do this. I do know that NCDOT is having a funding crisis, and I've since become aware that several projects will also be value engineered, although I don't believe any of the rest of them are in our District 10. So it's kind of unusual. I'm a little concerned because there are some well-placed people, I believe, that are trying to redirect money to other projects, and they think if they can stop this one or reduce its scope, that monies can be reallocated to other projects, like the 77 widening, for instance. However, this is considered a statewide mobility project, and there's only a few projects. It has to be a statewide project that the monies could be allocated to. And it's likely if this funding is greatly reduced or reallocated, it'll be reallocated in Nashville or Wilmington or something like that. It won't even be in the Charlotte area. So it's really unfortunate. I'm still digging into it, trying to get some more information. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. And we're, again, still trying to find information. If I find out any more information, I'll share it with the board. But it's of great concern because everybody, I think, knows how important this project is. And my biggest concern is that a lot of the funding for the parallel roadways may be reduced or eliminated. And that would be catastrophic for Matthews with all the businesses and things we have along 74. So keeping an eye on it, and I'll let you know if I hear anything. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, you have anything to add, or Hazen? Just really wanted to make you aware of that.
Thank you.
Second thing I want to bring to your attention, I've received a few emails on this topic, and I must admit that I myself perhaps at times have gone slightly above the speed limit in my own neighborhood, which is 25 miles an hour. But I've received a complaint from somebody in my neighborhood, not against me, but others traveling too fast in a lot of our subdivisions and neighborhoods. And I just want to remind everybody to keep a close eye on your speed, particularly at this time of year when children are out playing and running in the street and et cetera. And probably have additional conversations with Chief Pennington to maybe step up some enforcement in some areas that have become problematic because there's people really speeding, going 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour in a subdivision where children are playing. So before we have an accident, we need to rein that in a little bit. So please keep that in mind and spread the word to your friends and neighbors to slow down. There are a lot of kids out. I believe I copied everybody on the board. It's another topic about CMS's attendance at sporting events. They had limited it to the playoff game to 500 people in Providence Stadium, which holds 6,000 people. And I didn't understand the rationale in requiring people to sit 18 feet apart in a outdoor stadium when kids are 3 feet apart in class in school. So it didn't make any sense. So they did amend it. They moved it up to 30% for indoor and outdoor sporting events, but they have excluded things like theater, arts, band, etc. So you can go indoors at 30% capacity to watch a volleyball game, but you can't do so to watch a band or a play or something like that, which is just makes no sense. Commissioner McCool.
Just to piggyback off of that, I also reached out to the CMS school board about that. I had received a few emails and texts about Providence wanted to have their spring musical. They wanted to have 150 people in their 800-person theater, and they were denied, but basketball could have 150 parents watching basketball. So reached out to them, and hopefully they'll amend that soon.
Yes, I did receive a few responses from some board members, and I think they are going to amend it. It as currently to apply only to sporting events doesn't make any sense. All right, so that ends my mayor's report.
Mayor, I have one question or comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Most of our neighborhoods, not all, but many have HOAs. And if the neighbors want speed bumps put in, they are relatively cheap to put in by an HOA. I've put them in neighborhoods before as well. And it does solve that problem, particularly with people who don't live there and are kind of just visiting and leaving quickly. So again, if there's an HOA involved, that's their responsibility to implement speed controls.
But if it's on a town-owned road and they expect the town to do it, we have a huge backlog for that. Is that correct, Hazen? Isn't there a pretty big backlog for speed humps?
I know Susan's got a long list of to-dos. I'm not sure what the backlog for speed humps are. I'll check into that. But to Commissioner Miller's point, that is a workable solution. But I think we can also talk to the chief about, we got those, your speed is, 35 miles an hour, letting people know. I think most people don't really intentionally speed through their neighborhood. They want to slow down.
Hey, 20 or 25, which is the posted speed limit in many neighborhoods, is a really, really slow speed to drive. Particularly if you're coming off, driving 45 or 45 and turn into a neighborhood and have to go 20. But also, we're seeing a lot of complaints about, DoorDash and Uber and Amazon, these folks that are getting paid to go as fast as they can. So they want to get in and get out. So sometimes they're going a little fast. They want to necessarily.
Okay.
So I do have a clarification. We have 8 speed hump requests on Susan's desk right now. So there is a backlog.
Yeah, because I know the last one I recall was, I think, on Ames Street. They had wanted one, and they were told that there was several to be built beforehand. But a good point. Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Town manager, you have a report?
No report, Mayor.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Everybody try to second that. Have a motion from Commissioner McCool, a second from Commissioner Bland. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Urban?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Certainly.
I vote yes as well. This is one of our quickest meetings I can recall in a while. So good job. Everybody be safe, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Thank you.
I'll be safe.
Good night, all.
Good night.